All right, well, welcome everyone. Good evening and welcome to the Garcia Library. This is, thank you for joining us for our public hearing for the 5-year consolidation plan, action plan. We're trying to come out of a number. So the HUD consolidated annual action, or 5-year annual action plan. So this is one of 5 meetings we've had. This will be the final meeting in District 5. And so we've invited the public out in the community to help establish what the priorities are for the HUD allocation and for the city's 5-year plan and the fiscal year 2024 and program year 2023 for the allocations. And so this year, the city received in the community development block grant just over $2.6 million. In the home investment partnership program, the city received just over $1.3 million, and in the emergency solutions grant, the city received $235,549. So this needs assessment meeting is a requirement from HUD, and we utilize the citizen participation for part of the plan. So we want to just make sure that everyone understands we do value your input and your feedback regarding this plan. It's taken to heart and is part of consideration as this plan is developed. And so what we'll start with today is we have a presentation from Bill Wazaleski, who is with M&L Associates. He will be the facilitator for the meeting. He's going to take you through a presentation explaining the process to you, and you'll have some time following the presentation to ask any questions that you have about the process itself. And then we will go into some feedback input from you all about what you consider your priorities to be in regards to the allocations that HUD receives. So Bill's going to explain it to you and what the funding can be utilized for and how that process works. And then we'll take your input. And so we want to just start with a few housekeeping items before we get started. So first things first, the bathrooms. Those are by the front door when you came in, so you just head back in that direction if you need to utilize the facility. We have a microphone here at the beginning, in the middle of the room, so you're welcome to speak from your chair. This microphone will pick you up and get your comments, and everything is being recorded and streamed and so forth. So we'll also have some notepads available if you didn't pick one up on the way in. You can also write down your input, your feedback if you choose to not do so. During this meeting, you can write it down there and be collected by staff. So all of this will be recorded. So you have a couple of different options. We're also going to give you some email addresses during the presentation so that you can let us know with your comments that way as well. So we do ask that everybody just please be courteous and respect each other's opinions, because the funding it covers a lot of different areas of need. Okay, and there's different pots of money that also cover these different areas of need. So that's one of the reasons why we go through the presentation, is to explain what the different pots and funding is for, what it can cover, what the activities that can be covered. And so that'll be explained as well. So at this time, I'd like to do some introductions. I'd like to make sure that we introduce our council member for District 5, Mr. Gil Hernandez, is up here. And we also have Council Member Klein with us as well. We have our Chief Operating Officer from CC Water, Mr. Mike Murphy, is here as well. And also our Chief Financial Officer, Constance Sanchez, she's on her way. She was, like everybody else, got caught with the traffic, but she will be here as well. So we have quite a few staff members from Neighborhood Services. They are the ones who administer these grants, so they are here to assist with answering any questions you might have as well. So with that being said, I'd like to invite Councilmember Gil Hernandez up if you'd like to make some opening comments.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. District 5 is somewhat on the south side, so a lot of the funding won't be coming to District 5, but this affects the entire city. So your input is necessary for us to get these grants. If you have any questions on where it's going to be spent, it's not yet. It's to be determined. So a lot of these go to, I guess you could say houseless or homeless or however you want to say it. There are programs that are for that. There's not a lot of that over here. So you understand what District 5 is, if you go from Weber and Saratoga and come all the way down to Cimarron to Holly, sort of connect to Airline to Holly to Rodfield to Mansions to Oso Creek, and then follows Oso Creek all the way till it gets to Lago Vista. And then it picks up Lago Vista and the town provides it back to Oso Creek out to Weber. So if you can look at those boundaries, there's not not a lot in there. It's mainly residential, a little bit of commercial. So we don't necessarily have a lot of those programs. But like I said, your input is valued and it's important. So thank you very much, and hopefully this will give you a good idea of some of the things that we deal with in the city. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. All right, with that being said, I want to go ahead and turn our presentation over to Mr. Bill Wazalewski, and go ahead, Bill.
Thanks, Tracy. And again, thanks everyone for coming out this evening. We really do value your input on this process. Just a couple of housekeeping and one introduction. So Maya Smiley from our shop is also on the call this evening, in the meeting this evening, and she's going to be taking good notes. And that's one of the main reasons that we want to have this session. We want to be really good listeners tonight and hear really valid input and important input so that we're able to capture it in our 5-year consolidated plan. The other thing I want to mention and just reiterate, I think Tracy mentioned it in her opening remarks, but this is also, we are recording this meeting. And again, it's not for, it will not be for general public. It is just for our internal use. Again, to go back and listen if we need to make sure we captured all the comments correctly. So just to reiterate, I'm going to, in a second here, share a PowerPoint with everybody just to kind of go through an overview of the planning process and each of the funding programs under that the city will be receiving from HUD, and some what it can be used for, what these funds can be used for and can't be used for. But really, we want to, again, reserve the majority of the time for your input. So if you just bear with me for a second here, I'm going to share my screen. And so, as you can see, this is again, this is the 5th of our 5 council district meetings, and again, the purpose is to obtain input on the city's fiscal year 2023 to 2027 5-year HUD consolidated plan, and the program year fiscal year 24 program year 23 annual action plan, and it covers 3 entitlement fund programs that the city receives from HUD. Those include the Community Development Block Grant Program, or CDBG, the Home Investment Partnerships Program, or HOME, and the Emergency Solution Grant Program, or ESG. Just as just some kind of context from other meetings that we've been hearing, we just wanted to make it clear that these funds, the city does not determine the amount of the allocation or how it's divvied up amongst the programs. The city receives these annual allocations every year from HUD. It is based on a national formula that HUD has internally and does not share. It's based on a number of factors such as demographics, poverty rates, low mod rates, that sort of thing. And it changes from year to year, and it's based basically on the federal budget. Once the federal budget is established, HUD then determines what each community across the country receives in terms of their allocation under these funds. And so I just want to make sure that's understood by everyone, that these are not determined by the city, but they're provided to the city by HUD. So just a little bit of review of the agenda for the PowerPoint this evening. I'm going to again provide an overview of the 5-year HUD consolidated plan and planning process. We're going to provide a little bit of an overview and discuss what the city's previous 5-year CP priorities were for the fiscal year 2018 to 2022. Again, the city's in its last year of its current 5-year consolidated plan, and that's the purpose for these meetings. We are at the very beginning of this planning process, and that's why we're trying to obtain input on needs so that we can adequately look at how those priority needs have changed over the last 5 years and adequately be able to provide information to the city so that they can determine what their new 5-year CP priorities will be. We're also going to provide an overview of what the city used its program year funds for fiscal year 2024, fiscal year, or program year 2023 for their funds last year. Or their current year, what they're currently funding this year, so you get a sense of the types of activities that the city's funding. And then I'm just going to provide a very brief overview of the CDBG, HOME, and ESG programs. Again, what these funds can be used for, what they can't be used for. And then again, we're going to reserve the balance of the time for input from folks that have attended this meeting so that we get adequately capture what you feel the needs are for the city moving forward from related to a community development, affordable housing, and homeless needs perspective. So what is a HUD consolidated plan? A HUD consolidated plan is required for all HUD funding that comes to the city, and it covers the program year. It will cover the program year fiscal year October 1st, 2023 through September 30th, 2028. And the components of a 5-year plan include, as you can see on the screen, various required elements by HUD, and it's done in a program called IDIS, and HUD provides various requirements and questions that the city has to answer in order to get an approved HUD 5-year consolidated plan. As you can see, the very first thing, we're required to carry out stakeholder consultation, and that's made up of a number of different things. We're asking not just the general public for their input, as in these meetings that we've been having in each of the council districts, but we also carry out stakeholder consultations with organizations and groups and nonprofits throughout the city that serve low to moderate income persons or homeless persons. And we'll be carrying that out, as you'll see in a little bit, in the month of April. We're also required to do a housing and homeless needs assessment and a housing market analysis. These are, again, driven by a number of different data points, some of which HUD provides to us. Some of them are census data. Some of them are provided by information received from organizations within the city, and we supplement the data that's provided to us by HUD with additional local information that can, again, give us a sense of what your housing and homeless needs and housing market analysis are from a data perspective. And again, both the stakeholder consultation, the input from these public meetings, and the housing and homeless needs assessment and housing market analysis will be the basis for which the strategic plan or the local priorities will be established for the next 5-year period. In addition to this year's consolidated plan, we will also be preparing an annual action plan of proposed activities to address those identified local priorities in the strategic plan for the period of October 1st, 2023 through September 30th, 2024. And finally, and a very critical item is that these plans must be submitted to HUD no later than August 15th, 2023, or the city will lose its federal funding. And again, we are not going to miss that deadline. It'll be submitted in advance of that August 15th deadline. And again, just a brief overview of what I initially just said. This plan must be done every 5 years, and it must complete a new consolidated plan to set priorities, goals, and objectives for the use of the federal funds. And again, as I said, the city's in its last year of its last 5-year consolidated plan. In addition, every year during that 5-year process, a 5-year plan, an annual action plan must be described to the public and to HUD how it intends to spend its annual allocations each year. And as I said, this plan will include the first year of the new 5-year consolidated plan for fiscal year 2024, program year 2023. So in addition, I wanted to provide, as I said, a context so everyone has a sense of how the city prioritized their consolidated plan needs 5 years ago when we were going through this process previously. And so I just wanted to kind of outline what 5 years ago, what the 5-year priorities were. And as you can see on the screen, those included prioritizing increasing affordable housing for households at 0 to 30% of area median income, or AMI. And activities that carry out to address that goal was the city-funded housing rehabilitation program, a home buyer program, and emergency housing repair programs. In addition, the city prioritized public facilities and infrastructure improvements, which included such things as you can see on the screen: sidewalk improvements, curb and street improvements, as well as accessibility improvements related to ADA curb cuts improvements across the city. There was also the city prioritized blight removal, and that can basically included demolition. It also prioritized addressing homelessness across the city, which included support for homeless efforts and providing funding for emergency shelter operation support. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about the ESG program. And then finally, public services, which included code enforcement, senior services, and broadband connectivity, as well as administration and planning. In program year 2022, the action plan that's currently being implemented by the city in its final year of its last 5-year consolidated plan, under the city's CDBG program, the city funded activities that included a home repair program, utility assistance program, It provided funding for staffing related to code enforcement, provided senior meal truck and a generator for the meal truck, and it also provided funding for administration and delivery to carry out those activities. Under the home program, which is the sister program of the CDBG program, but really focuses on affordable housing, the city provided funding for a single-family housing rehabilitation program. It provided funding for an affordable rental housing construction that will benefit households at 0 to 30% of AMI. It provided funding for tenant-based rental assistance, or TBRA. It also provided Habitat for Humanity funds for homeownership new construction for persons who are below 80% of AMI. It also funded administration. And then finally, under the ESG program, or the Emergency Solutions Grant Program, the city funded emergency shelter assistance for homeless families, and they funded the Corpus Christi House and Salvation Army as it relates to the operation of those homeless facilities. It also provided funding for administration. So as I said, the purpose of this meeting is, again, we're at the beginning of the new 5-year consolidated planning process, and we're trying to help the city to determine what those priorities for the next 5 years will be, and how are we going to determine those priorities. So we will do the following during this consolidated planning process. As we indicated, we're getting input on community development and housing needs from these council district meetings. We're also getting information or input from local stakeholders who serve persons who are low or moderate income person, which is at or below 80% of AMI. Those will be carried out over 3 days in the month of April. And then we're also going to carry out a community survey that will be conducted in April and May. And again, we will let everyone know who attended these council district meetings, and it'll be on the city's website when that survey will be available. We would encourage everyone to participate in that survey. It'll be an online survey. Again, the idea is to get a number of different input, not just from data perspective, but also from the community as well as stakeholders, so that we can provide the best data and information to the city to help the city determine its new 5-year priorities. And then finally, we're going to incorporate data from demographic data and census data as it has been updated since the last 5 years, and include that in the document as well. Our schedule, just so everyone is understands our general schedule. The city will be publishing an application for funding under these programs, which will be available on April 1st. And the applications for funding under these programs will be due back to the city by May 1st. It's a competitive process. The city will analyze those applications and make a determination of what types of activities it wants to fund based on the new priorities that it establishes. We're also required to put the consolidated plan draft and annual action plan on public display for comment and input, and that is targeted to be on display from June 19th to July 17th. We're also required to have a second public hearing, which we anticipate having in mid-July. The purpose of that meeting is, again, to get input from the general public on the draft plan and or the annual action plan. And we would encourage everyone to review that plan and provide input as it sees fit. And then finally, we need to go to city council and get approval of the plan. We anticipate that happening by the end of July, so that we have at least the first week of the month of August to submit this plan to HUD and meet the deadline for submission of August 15th. I think these were mentioned in the opening comments, but I just wanted to reiterate that the city, HUD has already released the city's allocation. The city will be receiving a little over 2.6 million in CDBG funds in program year 2023. It'll be receiving a little over 1.3 million in home funds, and it'll be receiving a little of 235,000 in ESG funds for 2023. Again, just wanted to provide a quick overview of these programs. So under CDBG, there's various eligible activities that these funds can be used for. And as you can see on the screen, they include housing rehabilitation, homeownership assistance, public facilities and improvements, blight removal and or demolition, code enforcement, targeted economic development activities, acquisition and disposition of real property, and or public services. Just some notes on public services. The city is limited to no more than 15% of its CDBG grant to go to public services. And as you can see, public services includes those types of activities that are shown on the right-hand side of the screen there, but they must be limited to only 15% of its grant. In addition to funding an eligible activity, that activity must also meet one of 3 national objectives. And as you can see at the bottom, those national objectives include the activity must benefit low to moderate income persons, and at least 70% of the grant must go to activities that benefit low to moderate income persons. It could go towards the preservation or elimination of blight, but not more than 30% of the grant could go to that. Or it could meet an urgent need when health and welfare is threatened. It's a very little used national objective, but could happen if there was a natural disaster, flood, hurricane, something of that effect, to help address cleanup efforts if needed. And again, just to kind of review, what are some eligible costs? Personnel and staff are eligible. Office and rental or lease costs are eligible. Materials and supplies and various forms of communication. I do want to really highlight, though, things that are ineligible. Those would include such things as fundraising, political activities, expenses carry out regular responsibilities or functions of the local government, income payments, building or portion thereof used for general conduct of government, and the purchase of equipment and fixtures. Again, those are just examples. That's not a full representative list, but just wanted to give you a sense of some of the ineligible costs. The next program is the Home Investment Partnerships Program, or HOME. And again, as I said earlier, this is the sister program to the CDBG program, but its focus is creation and or rehabilitation of affordable housing for persons who are low to moderate income, i.e. below 80% of area median income. Those activities could be used that are eligible for use of home funds include housing rehabilitation, homeownership assistance, the new construction of affordable for sale or rental housing, and tenant-based rental assistance. We must also let you know that a minimum of 15% of the home fund allocation every year must be set aside and provided to what we call community housing development organizations, or CHODOs. These are special nonprofit 501c3 organizations that are community-based, focused on the development of affordable housing, and they have a very prescribed board of directors that's composed of its community residents. So a minimum of 15% of the home funds must go to CHODOs each and every year. And then finally, the Emergency Solutions Grant Program. This is specifically related to funds for homeless and homelessness type activities. Specifically, the majority or the eligible activities that could be carried out under with ESG funds include street outreach, homeless prevention, operations of emergency shelters, rapid rehousing assistance, and then HMIS, which is the computer system that helps track homeless individuals, and administrative activities. Before we get to the questions on the input of needs, I did want to provide contacts. So as we said previously, this is not your only chance to provide comments. If you forget about something or you wanted to provide something in writing, you could provide comments at any time during this planning process. And those could be directed to Latricia Canmore, and you can see her email address there. Tracy Cantu, her email address is there. And Nora Vargas, who is the Director of Homeless Services. She's a program manager for Homeless Services program, and her email address is there. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to ask if there are any questions on anything that I presented related to this consolidated plan process, eligibility activities, anything that I had presented on. I'd be happy to answer questions before we get into the needs assessment. And then Tracy, I can't see folks, so you might have to help me. I don't think the camera's on, so you might have to help me if I can't see who's raising their hand.
Regarding the presentation, or questions on that information. Start with that. Okay. And, oh, here we go, right here.
What is the city trying to do to keep the affordable housing that they build and designate actually affordable? Is there possibly the possibility of like a rent control introduction, or is there some other plan?
And that's very more as an input as far as overall priorities for the
Yeah, like basically, is the city willing to introduce rent control for specific?
Okay. We're happy to take that down as far as an item of input as well. The overall meeting. Thank you for that. We were wanting to make sure that we addressed any questions from the presentation itself before we went into the feedback and input section, but we'll take that information down for you as an idea. So any questions pertaining to what Bill presented to you as far as the process? I didn't see any before. Yes, ma'am.
For fiscal year, or for the 2018 to 2022 or 2023, it said that the city had, I guess, invested part of their grants towards sidewalks. Is that something you'd be able to answer, like which sidewalks and curbsides are actually?
I think we have staff that can address that question.
And we'll compare those divided.
Yes, ma'am. So Leticia Candler, I am the program manager for overseeing the fund. So regarding sidewalks, that would fall under infrastructure. That is another activity. It's in all areas. The most recent project that we did is Sunnybrook sidewalks.
That was between Pastoris and Weber. Deputy. Oh, not that far. Yeah. Okay.
Is there plans to kind of build up? Because I mean, if you go out to areas that are, low to moderate income, their sidewalks are torn up, but they don't have sidewalks for a lot of people who don't have vehicles, or they need to use bicycles to transport themselves to certain locations or jobs or what have you, and children as well that need to walk these streets to be able to get to school. And there's no sidewalks, or the sidewalks are so damaged, because I could drive through there, anyone could drive through there, and it doesn't seem like, I mean, you said the Sunnybrook area, but that's just like a spit drop in the bucket, for this. I think that's something that's really important that needs to be addressed so people can safely get to their destination. There's been countless already accidents of people, hitting and killing homeless people, and also people and just everyday citizens who are on their bikes. So I think that should definitely be a focus moving forward into this new planning year.
Thank you. Good one. Thank you.
Yes, that sidewalks have been.
Yeah, it's been, it has come up as definitely something that's important to several community members that have attended it. This gentleman back here.
Yes, what is the city planning on doing for the homeless? Y'all think you'll have enough facilities to house them? Or rehabilitation programs offered to them to actually get them back in the working field, or just help them out. These people need a place to be safe, and it's wrong now that they're getting run over left and right. They're getting run out of the bushes. I mean, they need a place to go. And I got a really good idea for what to do about that. I submitted to Ms. Vargas. I'm just waiting on my 301C verification right now, my tax number. But I have a really good idea. I'd like to present it at some point.
Okay, that sounds good. I think we can connect you with our staff. As mentioned, there will be some upcoming stakeholder meetings as well, where that information can be brought up at that time, because that's where we will bring together service providers and agencies that are wanting to apply for the grant funding. And so that's where you'll be able to demonstrate your capacity to be able to bring those programs to fruition. So that would be, you'll watch for that. And like I said, we can get you some additional information on we have a schedule that can let you know when those stakeholder meetings will be
Okay.
and where that'll take place. So definitely, I appreciate your interest.
Yeah.
I just want to do a follow-up to that. Grant funding is a reimbursable grant, so I'm showing that staff capacity and financial capacity. So that's money that, the organization, talking about, once it creates nonprofit, we would have to show the capacity to be able to financially fund the project. So just wanted to mention these are reimbursed, the work on reimbursement basis.
Is that mandated by the federal government? Because then you have a lot of local organizations that might not have the capacity, or they may have the capacity, they don't have the funds, to match them for, I think last year said 500,000 or something. I don't think that really gives an opportunity for local organizations that know the community and are already out there doing the work and trying to make sure that, they go by the book now to provide these services, whereas the city giving money over to like Salvation Army, which is a huge organization that gets, money from other donors outside of Corpus Christi. I would like to see, or want to hear about how the city's trying to work with, local organizations, or actually trying to manage this themselves instead of like pushing it off to someone else.
That is a requirement for HUD for these particular grants. There is some state funding, and then there are state funds that have a different setup, but for these specific ones, they do operate on a reimbursement basis, and that is a requirement.
I have a question.
Yes.
We have several senior centers around town, but we have none on the south side. And I think we need a south side senior center, because there's a lot of people in our community who are living on Social Security. They're very poor, and they would enjoy having a senior center somewhere in this area, because they may be living with family members and whatever. But we need some mental health facilities, and those senior centers could be used as a mental health outpost. So I really, and then also the meal services, because a lot of people could get to the senior center to have decent meals. But if you have to go across, the closest one to me is Airline, and that's a long way to go. So, Cal Allen doesn't have one either. So Cal Allen, even across the Oso.
Very good point. Thank you.
Just a couple of thoughts. Maybe something for economically disadvantaged students that are in high school, like SAT and ACT training. Those books are sometimes really expensive, and I think sometimes that students don't know the right process to get into colleges. They don't know that you have to take these tests, and at the same time you have to do really well on them to get to like better school or just get into a school period. So I think if they had something that helped them to get to that point they need to get to, some kind of training and this point. And so like, and another one is, for seniors, a lot of the times, I should start off by saying the weather's been pretty rough lately. We've been going through some super cold periods of time and also like really hot periods of time. Maybe a little program to help fix like heaters and ACs in their house. Just, certain stipend to get like someone to check it out and get it ready for the winter. And then maybe a little stipend for like heaters, portable heaters or something that keeps you warm. Because I know that's probably an issue with a lot of people. Suffering for the winter and stuff.
Very good ideas. And then we do have, as Bill mentioned earlier, as part of our consultations, they have staff taking down the information, but we also have staff that are writing down your information as well. So very good ideas. So again, just know that we are taking this down and taking it very, very seriously in consideration of the upcoming plan. So good thoughts going around. So yes, sir.
I was wondering, like right here in Flower Bluff, that is like one of the only spots I've ever known that it's an island in the middle of the ocean or in the bay, but you can drill down 4 feet and get fresh water. Why don't we have a showering station there in the bluff for people? I mean, and you can drill wells all the way out here. Why can't we have a public facility so people can get a shower? To get free from out on the ground, you know?
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to mention, the gentleman, as far as ACs and heaters, there's several agencies that we fund, some of those like weather station programs. Also, we have in-house manual repair program that ties to other, it can't just be that specific, only for AC and only, it has to be like, and then they have to be eligible criteria for that. So we have some similar out there, we fund agencies that do provide the service.
Yes.
Yeah, we piggyback on some of the interest in homelessness, and I'd be interested to know the gentleman's idea back there for addressing homelessness. My priority that I would stress is permanent supportive affordable housing. And the reason for that is because all the other great ideas that we have for feeding and clothing and giving temporary housing, even TIBR grants, are only maintaining homelessness. They're not ending homelessness. And we're not going to end homelessness. The people who don't have a home, they need a home, right? We're not going to end homelessness without homes, affordable, supportive, permanent housing. And I think any of us who have looked into that already know that it's just the house is not enough. It has to have the wraparound services. You got to continue to help people heal from their trauma, from their addictions, in the street life, and so on. And that's not always easy, but there's good evidence now of successful programs across the state that are doing it quite successfully. Towns like Corpus Christi, we could do that, and you can see that track on the United States Interagency website on Council on Homelessness. So my priority that I would ask for these funds are permanent, supported, affordable housing. Without housing at the end, it just keeps backing up into the streets. And more it's going to end up backing up to the south side. Because most of our homeless are fleeing from the north side where they're used to being around the corridor of services, but they're losing the ability to stay for very many people to stay for very long anywhere. And so that's why they're showing up here more. Right. So priority for me would be permanent, supportive, affordable housing for the homeless community.
Very good. I think that we have discussed that as part of like a day-based rental program where it is inclusive, it includes case management and it's follow-up, it's a program as opposed to just providing.
Yeah, TIBRA, tent-based rental assistance grant, those are great, and I've got several people in TIBRA housing, and some are taking advantage of that, and they're actually getting into the workforce or they're getting on their own. I work with people who will never be able to do that. Never be able to do that. 2 years, and they're getting back on the street again. So I'm not talking about a 2-year program. I'm talking about permanent, supportive, affordable housing.
Very
Excuse
good.
me. I might have something on that. I believe that I have a solution. I know this because there are doctors, lawyers, and that I know, of course, people from the streets that have worked a certain program that I know that works because I've worked this program. Was mentioning to somebody that I have a piece of property that I would like to maybe build something on, and basically I have a GD program right now, and that's part of the solution. We want to team up with a partnership with some of these other programs like the council, the safety council, where they can get jobs. I mean, because a lot of these people do not have jobs. You know, they're not city councilmen, they're not doctors, they're not lawyers. They go back to McDonald's or they go back to construction where it's like, I don't want to do that. You know, so I believe it's one program that works. I believe that education is important. And of course, like the gentleman said, it's like we have to house them somewhere. There has to be something where it's like a constant monitor, or not monitoring, but basically enforce a lot of these rules and so reprogram their minds. And I know this because I know that it works. And there's a lot of people that I really can vouch for that. And so I have been doing a lot of research and hoping to talk to some people that can help me out, and that's what I'm going to do.
And I, as well, encourage you to attend the stakeholder meetings that are coming up as well. I mean, those are open to the public, but those, get a little bit more specific into, the programs and the requirements for those programs and how different organizations can apply to be part of that. So I do encourage you to come to that meeting as well when those take place. But I think we're having a great dialogue today. I think this is probably one of the best as far as the input that's coming from you all. So,
I would just say I'm surprised to see is much focus on homelessness on the south side. I mean, I see it heavy in this population of homelessness on the north side, but I am starting to see it on the south side. I have my clergy friends, I'm a retired Episcopal priest. They're saying, why are we seeing so many more homeless people coming around here? Well, because they're having to leave the north side.
Yeah,
They don't have a safe place to be, that's why I said.
that's right.
They don't have a safe place to be, and that's what I kind of have. I have a really good idea on that also. I want to work, a lot of agencies, hand in hand, because this is just the mislinks to the problem, because, you really, how can you go to work if you can't take a shower somewhere? And how can you, you gotta have you gotta have hygiene, shower, you gotta have an opportunity to go to work, and if you can't take a good night's sleep and, can't get cleaned up, how you gonna do that? And then where are you gonna put your stuff while you're trying to go to work? So I love this. For a little while, I kind of learned it myself, so learn how to survive. And this is the things you would need to help them move on and come back into society, or not enable them, but to help them move forward.
well, thank you. Appreciate you bringing that perspective to the conversation. So definitely, yes, sir.
Yeah, I can to piggyback off of his comment. I think even and they might have this already, but grants into technical education. Just we have a lot of industry in the area, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And the more people know on the technical side, being a boilermaker or just instrument tech or something like that, something where they can focus their energies and really develop a career is super important. I can see, but I think that there might be grant money already, but there was even more grant money for them to get an education. Homeless, I'm sorry, or just people who are in need of a career or something. That'd be a good place to start because it actually begins to.
Or rising private industries there.
Yeah, so it only anything that would assist that. I mean, I think makes a situation where people are in a better spot for the future. Yeah.
I think these little mini homes or mini apartments would be an idea. Because, if you're homeless, you don't have anything in your possession that you need. You just need a small place with a decent bathroom type situation. These mini homes now, some communities are making a mini home community. And they have small little houses that have a little kitchen, a little bathroom, and a bed, storage area, 30 to 50 square feet. I mean, that sounds pretty small, but it would be helpful if they had built-in furniture where they wouldn't have to have anything, just moving with the place. And that could be really an option. We have a lot of areas in the city that are underdeveloped because they're not great areas. So I think that might be something. I have another question. We have a lot of immigrants coming in. Are they eligible for programs in the city? Do they get on the list for housing ahead of our own community, their citizens?
Yeah, we get ahead of our residents, but there's the
We
program
don't
is,
discriminate, and so, as long as the program services are being provided, depending on the program framework is set. But if you're asking if they have a preference, that would be probably per agency question. So for us that we know, we don't have any of that. So,
and with these particular programs, they're not distributed to an individual directly. they go to service providers, to organizations who are providing services, who are providing training, other types of, again, just the services are given then to the individuals by our partners that receive the dollars that are out. Where they're at, back here.
I just want to really emphasize that we really need to follow the best practices. Look at the case studies around the world, cities that have succeeded, they have out of the box thinking. We're already hearing things that they're doing. I've seen cities with the shower, I've seen the locker room, I've seen the tiny homes in Austin. And you guys, you are the experts in this. This is what you do full time. This is your job. But you guys probably know about this already, or you should learn more about. And another thing, like one of these ideas that are really innovative and forward thinking is mixed zoning, because you're not just making homes, you're making communities. And a lot of these like low income to no income housing are so far away in their food deserts. You need to be within 2 miles of a grocery store so that you're not in the food desert. I really want to emphasize here that 12% of Americans don't drive, and even more so to the lower to no income people. That's why you have to go think beyond sidewalks. You have to think about protected bike paths as well. Because you can't get to your source of food with 2 miles per hour walking. You need to go 17 miles per hour. And someone told me who works with houseless people that, something like a bike, it makes a difference between hunger and a meal. So it's something to like really think about. It gets you to jobs. And when I talked about mixed zoning, like being close to like a source of food, source of amenities, even a community center, because like I said, you're not making homes, you're making a community. You want to have a good quality of life. You don't want people to be isolated and just have a cookie cutter home in some place and call it a day, Maybe think of like more libraries, more like a place where they can use internet, like full amenities. Maybe a lower cost commercial space, maybe some lower to income people, they want to be entrepreneurial, like pop-up shops. I also read another statistic, 25% of Americans are food insecure. So that's why I'm really emphasizing to have when you're making these constructions, please make them within 2 miles of a source of food, and consider mixed zoning. Don't have these houses, there's no sidewalks, there's no way to get around. Like I said, 12% of Americans don't drive, and even more so these people. And please look at like what other cities are doing. There's even outside the country, I used to live in Montreal, and they have their housing in downtown areas, places where so that people can integrate into society, not far off in the middle of nowhere kind of places. That's what I'm saying. Thank you.
Going off the integrating housing in like a community. What is the city going to do to ensure that it actually puts these people in a good place, because the city has already violated the Fair Housing Act by trying to put some low-income housing out by industrial zones? What is the city going to do to ensure that not only are these houses, if they're going to be brand new, that they're made in not food deserts and not far away where it's you can't get anywhere without a car? What are they going to do to ensure that, and was there ever an investigation into how that proposal got pushed as forward as it did?
I'm not familiar with that one that you're referring to. What I can say is with some of our projects, those come forward as far as the developers are bringing forward those locations for them.
Correct. There are some requirements, and I'm not familiar with the specific project that you're talking about. Do you have a name or the name of the project? 2022. So you don't have a name for the project? You know, if it was an affordable housing project, have they specifically funded it? Okay,
So it
so
was going to be built out fiber.
You're talking a low barrier shelter?
Yes, that actually.
Okay, low barrier shelter was a suggestion, but was never actually.
Oh wait, no, not the low barrier. This is definitely. You have to go and find I believe.
We've not funded any housing on that side of 37. The last one that was closest was probably in Leopard near Ray High School, which is a 9% housing tax credit program that maintains low, I guess you could refer to it as rent control, maintains low rents for low income, should I say, workforce housing. It would be probably 60% of the, virtually half the average cost of rents in the area. But there's nothing ever planned on the other side of 37, on the north side of 37. We have not done any of that in the city, at least in the last 6 years.
The other point, just to Councilman Hernandez, is if an affordable housing project comes forward, there's certain criteria that they have to meet within HUD standards to be funded through us. So they have certain radius that they allow the projects to be built. And if it's within those thresholds and they qualify for funding, then we would fund them if they're chosen.
What you may also be referring to is that there was an area development plan for that part of for the downtown area, which also included the Hillcrest area. And it included mixed use areas. However, planners failed to realize that because of its proximity to the wastewater treatment plant, railroads, and to industrial areas, it would never qualify for HUD funding. So even though the plans are there, there's not really a source of funding that would allow that to be built in that area because of the industrial area. So right now, there's really no plans for that, even though it's in one area. Does that make sense?
The city would guarantee that, I mean, obviously by HUD standards, that there is no affordable housing built near these areas. That's just.
There's not housing, period. The current existing housing there was a buyout program, but there's a lot of problems with that because what will happen is that sometimes people will live in a house where the original owners passed away, but their family continued to live there, so there's no clean title to the property owned to whether they could be bought out. So there are still some people that are there, spotty areas, and there really hasn't been a way to move on. And some of them chose not to, just because the traditionally wanted to live there. I would prefer that they take their time, take some money and go somewhere else so they won't be that proximity to the industry. I'd rather that be, at least a buffer zone where you don't have that. But unfortunately, sometimes people just don't want to.
And we're also there first before the industry.
Yeah, that's true.
And the city was involved in the project with the Leathers apartment complex. They closed down in that specific area, and those residents were relocated to the Palms of Leopard, many of those residents. So
Then that's a 9%.
yeah, that's the 9% that you're talking about. So that's where they were relocated to that complex.
I think the city did build, well, this is Thanksgiving Home, in partnership with the Corpus Christi Housing Authority, did build some homes in the last 5 years up in the non-apartment neighborhood, further to the west. It's still north of I-37 yet, and their side where NPID runs into I-37. To my knowledge, I think they've stopped that now. I'm not sure how many they built, a handful or whatever. They were buying lots and building homes on them, and I think that project has stopped, from what I know right now.
And they also did build some in the Flower Bluff area, we part of Flower Bluff as well. So quite a few successful ones that were also built in that area.
Yeah. That's lost my train of thought.
Okay, well, we'll come back to it. All right, we are approaching 7 o'clock, building out just a little bit longer because we did start a little late. So
We did have a question on.
Oh, just a real quick.
Okay.
How many low-income or affordable housing providers currently exist in the city? Like, I know that you might not have the exact number on you right now, but an estimate of like how many affordable homes are there?
it's on.
Homes, apartments, places that someone could live.
We have several, and I can't give you the exact number, but Prospero, which is the Palms, Leopard Street, they have one of there's Matt House that has several in the city. There's some that have been here forever, and they also include for elderly individuals. So we have one on Cimarron, right there, where Rome's auto shop is. The one right next to it is a 9% housing tax credit program for elderly or people that are senior citizens. So we have them here on the south side. As a matter of fact, we even have one that we just applied for, two of them. One on Weber, near the intersection of Saratoga and Weber, and also they applied over in Holly next to the Moody's Meat Market. So they're not limited to the west side or the north side or any place like that. We have them throughout the city. And honestly, they have some requirements, right? They get scored on points on how close they are to food, how close they are to schools, how close they are to amenities. So there's also the 4% tax credit program, which we don't have a lot of those. They're just not as lucrative in terms of, the only one I know of is the one down in Fish Pond, basically. So, I mean, there's a lot of these programs out there. And, this is dear to my heart because when I was a teenager, I was homeless. Lived in a Salvation Homeless Shelter for the better part of the year. So I understand how it is. I understand how it feels. More so than anything.
Now, would the city be willing to donate a lot or property, to get some place going if it was out of the public eye?
So we've looked at some options, and we're trying to work with Thanksgiving Homes, but those are more for low cost home ownership.
Yeah.
It's not quite the program you're referring to in terms of that. Now, the low barrier shelter aspect was something to where you were looking at to provide showers or a place to congregate, so where they're not big. However, there's been a lot of opposition to that. For example, like what San Antonio did, they have, what was that? Haven for Hope. Costs the city millions of dollars every year, and it hasn't quite, it's created somewhat of a magnet for people from outside the city to come to the shelter. So what we want to do is make sure that we're taking care of the people here, not attracting people from other places to come in. What happens is that, in some of the states or cities that are friendliest, should I say, or have the most programs, have the largest populations. If you've ever been to Los Angeles or San Francisco.
Corpus has been pretty good about keeping everybody out, for a long time.
Well, it's a balance, right? It's how can you help people without creating more problems?
Other cities just ship them back and forth to each other, and they give them bus tickets and send them to this city, and that's how they do it down in people in bigger cities.
Right, so
come here to Corpus as well. We actually go out and speak to the houseless people. They're coming from these bigger cities and they're being sent down here.
Actually, I'm hearing it's coming from smaller cities and sending them to bigger cities that have the services. I heard from San Marcos recently, Romford, or places like that, where they just don't have the services and they try to ship them off to another city.
From here to here now.
You're here now, right? So, in looking at it, it's a balance of trying to address the needs and services of the people that are here. And we asked for this funding. I think this is more than what we got last year, or the last couple of years, in terms of this funding per year. And we try to work with the organizations that are doing it every day. Salvation Army,
Corpus Christi Whole House.
Whole House,
Metro Ministry.
Metro Ministry. So, because they're doing it all the time, and they have more time and effort and expertise in it than we do. Plus, I don't know about you, but I find that sometimes government programs aren't as always efficient as private entities.
Yeah.
They're also not accountable to the people.
Well, if they get funding from us, they're eligible for funding. And that's where I'm the chair of the audit committee, so I'm not afraid to audit anybody.
We did discuss that in previous meetings, that there are measures, there's the audit trail, there's the accountability, and so there's requirements that they have to meet, and they have to continue to comply with those in order to receive funding. So there's mechanisms in place.
It just seems like unnecessary middleman at that point. As far as I guess they are accountable to the city as far as that goes, but it would be a little easier if it was just a city funding program.
Oh, yeah, I understand what you're saying. Some of our programs are, because our city departments receive the funding and they take that and create funding or with eligible items that they use, like whether senior meal trust and so forth. And so that's done through the Parks and Recreation Department. So city Other city departments are sub-recipients, they do take the money and operate, so.
Speaking of which, I do agree with you that there should be a senior center. And we're looking at an opportunity, see, the library here is kind of a joint effort with the school district, but because of the security around schools, it's been a little bit more difficult to operate with this particular library. So we are looking at possibly doing something, a combination of the library and the senior center together, where we have a combination of things that they can do, participate in. And we're looking at that now, but it's.
Yeah, we
Budget's
even
going
got
forward.
some city property that they can use, like, I know in my neighborhood, they've got this huge park in Country Club Estates, it's huge. And
You're
right
talking about St.
now,
Andrews
that,
Park?
huh?
St. Andrews Park?
Yeah. I mean,
That
and then there's
unfortunately
one
is-
down on the end that the neighbors screamed and hollered about them using it for anything, it's between the apartments.
Unfortunately, that is a former landfill. We can't use it to build it.
Oh, really? You mean in our, at St. Andrews Park?
St. Andrews Park is a
Really?
landfill. And we can't build it.
Oh, yeah, on that.
Same thing with the park around Greenwood. Over off, yeah, right off Greenwood, where Greenwood Pool is, that's a former landfill as well, so we can't build anything there. The only thing we do is park.
What about the old HEB over there? It's got lots of parking and it used to be a school. Is it worth looking into? I mean, that's,
You know, that's a fantastic idea.
it's built and everything.
We actually were looking at the library.
Right, like 3 or 4 people are right now.
Yeah, I mean, really, you could use some of these big buildings.
So that, I had never thought of it, so that's a good idea.
Well, it is, you know, because it's
Centralized location.
parking. You
It's got
know,
parking already built in.
yeah, everything's right there. And you can have a library and a senior center. In fact, you can even have a youth center. That's what they do at Midvale. They have youth on one end of the place, and then they have senior center on the other end.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, kids need more things to do around here. There's sticker birds everywhere, so sports are like out of the question, you know, for the most part. They need more activities, more
Yeah, they do.
for kids, because they're going to just get into, you know, drugs and,
Right.
mischief if they don't have anything to do. I mean, I know most of them stay at home and on their computers most of the time now, but
Yeah, I know. But it'd be useful to even teach them about how to use computers in their senior centers. And have intramural sports and, you know, activities. Cool,
That's an excellent
nice
idea.
too.
That's an excellent idea.
Well, sure, right quick. As far as, all this homeless stuff, it's mainly about drugs. I mean, that's, you go to the Salvation Army, you go anywhere, all the drugs that they can find in that area are gonna be there as well. I know this because, I mean, I've worked with a lot of homeless. I mean, I'm always helping them out, feeding them, clothing them. I talk to them, I've got to know them on a one-on-one basis. And we can do all of this stuff. We can give them housing, give them this, give them that. The problem is the drugs. That's the main thing in the city, is the drugs. And nowadays, from what I know, from what I hear from them, you can go into a store and buy it. You know, and that stuff is mind altering. You know, and that's what has our streets, that's what has our kids, that's what has our families, that's what's tearing everything apart, is because of the drugs. And you can do all this stuff, you can keep giving, with no solution. And we still have the problem, which is drugs. I mean, you can go to an Arabian store and go buy something there. They got 3 or 4 things that will alter your mind, that'll have you, I'm not sure y'all seen some of these people on the corner streets, they're freaking out. And that's stuff they can buy inside the store. Store it, smoke it, just you can even shoot it now. You know, and that's along with the ice. I mean, we can do all these things, right? There's got to be something else in which I know. I'm saying that I know the solution. I know because there's so many people that I know personally that have worked the program, and it's been successful. And the reason why I believe, my opinion, people don't want to work this program because it works. And for me, seeing some of these other programs, it's a money-making industry. You know, they keep getting money, they keep having the same people come in over and over. And they'll tell you there's a success rate, but there's not. You know, there's one that I heard that he said he had a 30% success rate. That was a lie. Everything about that program was a lie. And I know I stand against that place. And like I said, I believe I have a solution. And I mean, if I'm willing to stay, hang out, and see if y'all are willing to work with me, and maybe we can come up with a solution to help. You know, I mean, I know we can't save everybody because there are homeless people that are comfortable being where they're at. But I mean, if you can change one's mind, because I've seen it, it's like a reaction, then the next one will follow, the next one will follow. And I know this, but if you don't have a program that's going to actually help them and keep them there enough where they're going to work this program, and then they will go back out. You know, it's basically hopeless.
People are quit, let's say, once if they're self, they can't be forced into it.
So we do have, someone from the homeless team here, the division, and we can certainly have entertain an offline conversation and also get some information when I was there.
All right, sorry. Yeah, so we are getting, we're over our time, and I appreciate it. This has been great dialogue, right? So I think probably the best of all the district meetings we've had.
It's just
It is, so the most participation and really a lot of great dialogue conversation, so appreciate that. You got one more question or comment for us? We gotta wrap it up, okay? So,
How is the city going to announce or advertise the next round of input session? Because I know there's the single session, and then I believe there's a second chance for public comment or like input.
Leticia, there's
Sure, so the stakeholder meetings are gonna take place on April 10th. And if you sign up, we'll send you a notice, we're also gonna post it on our website. As far as the drafting of the plan, we'll have an actual public hearing. We draft the plan and then move forward, 30-day notice, present the plan. And then there's another meeting, Bill, you wanna speak to that?
Yes, you talk about when it's on public display. When the plan's on public display, we will have one additional public needs meeting or input meeting for comment on the draft plan. Once it's on display, that'll be during the month of, I think it was June 17th to July 19th, something to that effect. And we will duly advertise for that meeting and would encourage folks to come out and provide comments on the draft plan.
Yeah, so that'll be June 19th to July 17th when the plan will be displayed. So again, really do appreciate everyone who came out and provide some input and feedback for us and all the great questions. I mean, a lot of really good ideas. Appreciate y'all's time. You know, this is taking time away from your family, from what you need to do. But we do appreciate you and know, again, we have several people taking down the information, and we have staff here that's willing to stay, you know, and speak with you if you have something you want to bring up to them. They're more than willing to speak with you. But we do need to respect everyone's time and go ahead and wrap up our meeting for today. Again, appreciate you. You have anything you wanted to add, Councilman? Appreciate you.
Thank you for coming.
Councilman Klein, again, appreciate you. I mean, this is at least the third meeting, right? Yeah. Okay. So appreciate you being and making the trip out to meet us as well. So thank everyone for being here. Again, and thank Bill. Appreciate you and your facilitation of our process and walking us through this, so to make sure everybody understands how this flows. So with that said, we'll conclude our meeting for today. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.